Good morning and welcome back to another Facebook Live with the Environmental Learning Centers of Connecticut. My name is Lauren Pryor. I'm going to be taking a look at one of our residents that we have living at the Barnes Nature Center, temporarily housed here at the Indian Rock Nature Preserve. But before we get into that, there are two things that I want you to be aware of, two upcoming events, or one upcoming and one ongoing event that we are doing here at Indian Rock and at the Barnes Nature Center. So this week, continuing through this week, going until Saturday, we have the St. Patrick's Day Hike and Seek. So you can go over to the Barnes Nature Center. The building is closed right now, but the trails are open, and we want you to get out on those trails, specifically the Red Trail, as we have a hike and seek event going on out on the trail. You're going to be walking the Red Trail. It is a natural trail, relatively flat, cleared, but about half a mile long, and you're going to be seeking some clovers out there, some shamrocks with letters that spell out a message. So you're going to go out there, take the hike, see if you can spot all of those letters, and then see what they spell. And then, of course, you can take a picture at the end and tag us here on Facebook. And that's our St. Patrick Hike and Seek event going through all this week through till Saturday. Another upcoming event we have on Saturday is starting at 8 and running to noon is our annual Pancake Breakfast. Now, since we are still in a pandemic, Pancake Breakfast is looking a little different this year. It is pre-registration. You can register on our website, elcct.org. It's going to be a pick-up, grab-and-go breakfast. But while you're picking up, you can come check out our maple sugaring demo that we'll have going. But check that out on our website, and let's start what we really want to do this morning on our Facebook Live, meeting one of our residents from the Barnes Nature Center. And who we're going to be meeting today is Elliot. And Elliot, let's get a view on Elliot, is this animal. So this animal is a common pet that you can have in the United States. But outside of the United States, if we fly or sail across the ocean all the way to Australia, you can find them as a wild animal. So this is a type of animal that can be captive as a pet, or you can find them out in the wild. This bearded dragon, Elliot, this one was not a wild bearded dragon. This one was a captive bearded dragon that has been bred in captivity for some generations. But found out in the wild, in Australia, you can find them in the desert. Okay, but they can also be found in their grasslands, the savannas, and in woodland. But they are a reptile. The bearded dragon gets its name because of those spikes that we see kind of around the chin, back of the head, and then going down its body. We'll zoom in there a little bit. Okay. So it gets the name bearded dragon because of those spines that come out there, that hole there. Okay, that's the bearded dragon's ear. So being a reptile, it doesn't have an external ear like us people. It doesn't have this the fleshy pinna, so we got just a hole in the ear. A hole in the head, that's that ear. So our bearded dragon here, there's 8 different types of bearded dragons. They come in a variety of sizes. This bearded dragon, when it gets to be an adult, will be a little shorter than 2 feet long. It is an omnivore. So in captivity here, we give Elliot lots of invertebrates like cockroaches and crickets and worms, but we also make sure he has fresh veggies, salad, grapes, carrots, blueberries. In just a few moments, we'll put some crickets in here so we can watch him eat. But a little bit more about this animal. Okay, captive bearded dragons can be bred to be different colors. Elliot here's kind of your standard bearded dragon, this nice tan brown color. Out in the wild, they will also be this nice tan brown color to mimic the color of their environment. So hanging out on rocks and in dirt, they're able to blend in and camouflage. Elliot, being a bearded dragon, is a reptile. So features making this animal a reptile, of course, are the animal's scales that we see on the outside of the body. Reptile scales come in all sorts of hardness, colors. So our bearded dragon here is rough on top, okay, but on the tummy here, it's actually pretty soft. Those scales are soft. Just like we have the crested gecko, who has very soft scales, but in comparison, if you were to touch, say, another common lizard pet, the blue-tongued skink, they have very hard scales. So scales can be soft or hard, but they must have scales. If you're a reptile, you've got scales. And of course, these scales will shed. Right, we see Elliot's kind of got a little wrinkles here, but scales are not stretchy. So when this animal grows, think of you putting on a shirt. As you grow from a kid to being a teenager and an adult, you've got to change the size of your shirt because it's going to get too tight. So scales don't stretch. So the scales will fall off as this animal grows, and there'll be just brand new, bigger scales underneath that allow growth for this animal. But even adults will shed their scales, and that just keeps their coat nice and healthy. I do not have any of the shed scales from Elliot here. A lot of times he'll eat it. But we can look at some snake scales for some comparison. So this is a snake shed from one of our other reptiles, our other resident reptiles, our corn snake Darwin. So you can see when the scales are shed, they're the actual scales coming off. So they are the real scales coming off. And if they shed in one go like this, they will all stick together. Or they can, depending on the environmental factors, how humid it is, if it's really dry, they can be really, really flaky. And you can see individual scales come off. Or they can come off in one go just like this. Sometimes with our lizards, you see it come off in patches. So we might have a head patch come off, or the leg patch, or a nice section of the tail come off. But a lot of times our lizards will eat their shed scales, and that's a way of a innate behavior to hide their presence from other animals out in the wild. And then it gives them also a nice little calcium boost as they're eating their scales. So it's kind of a multi-purpose of eating the scales. But for our snake here, we can kind of see the comparison. We have small scales on, this is the back of the snake. So the dorsal side, where if we flip it over, our scales are a different shape. So scales do come in different shapes. They're not always those little circles. Okay, and those scales will help the snake get traction and grab the ground as it moves. Elliot here, he gets traction with his feet. Okay, he does have long nails. We will give him little toenail trimmings. Okay, so we will clip his nails. That's part of having a captive animal, is part of his care. Out in the wild, they use those feet for digging, so they will burrow down into the sand and the dirt and the rocks that they're living in. but they're also pretty big runners. They can move pretty quickly. We see we've got digits here of different sizes, so we've got a really long toe here. Okay, that's just to help them grab the ground and to dig. Okay, so their front feet are shaped a little bit differently than their back feet. We can get them side by side, so we have the front foot and the back foot. Okay, this animal, as a reptile, they have a sprawling kind of posture, so we see that the arm here, the arms are bent. Okay, this is just the natural posture, the position for a lizard. We see, let's get a top view, right? The legs coming out at the side, so the legs are not underneath the lizard like how we walk. They're out to the side, so we call that sprawling. So having toes that extend like that help the lizard kind of propel themselves forward as they're walking and running. So we call that sprawling, where the legs are out to the side of the animal instead of directly underneath. So think we've got kind of a lizard here where we see them coming off to the side, and then in your head, if you imagine a deer walking, or even your dog or your cat walking, how their feet are directly underneath them. Or if you are standing up straight and you're thinking how you walk as a person, your legs are right underneath you. Another big feature to being a reptile, of course, besides from the scales, is inside. This animal's got to have a backbone. Today we don't have a lizard skeleton, but for comparison we do have a turtle shell. This is an old box turtle shell. But on the inside we see, here's where the turtle's head would be. This is where the turtle's tail would be. We see the backbone. So in the sake of turtles, in the case of turtles, the backbone is fused with the shell. Okay, running from back of the head down towards where the tail would be. Same thing with our bearded dragon. Even though we can't see the backbone right now, we can kind of trace where it'd be back behind the head, down the body, and then just about here, and then of course the tail starts. So being a lizard, being a reptile, we've got scales, we've got a backbone, and this animal is cold-blooded. So you might hear the words warm and cold-blooded often, but what you don't hear often is the word ectotherm and endotherm. Same thing as cold and warm-blooded, just the more scientific words. So being cold-blooded, we've got an ectotherm here, or ectothermic. So that just means that this animal can't regulate its own body temperature. So think about what you as a person do when you're too cold. You put on a layer, of course, you put on a jacket or a sweater or hat or mittens. But when you're too cold, what your body actually does is shiver. When you're too hot, what your body does is sweat. Being a reptile, this animal can't do that. They can't regulate their own body temperature, so they have to physically move in their environment. They have to move to a sunny spot or move to a shady spot to warm up and cool down. That's why we see turtles basking. Or if you visit Australia, you're going to see bearded dragons basking on logs or rocks. Or if you have a pet bearded dragon, you supply them a heat lamp. Now with Elliot here, I mentioned he was an omnivore, that we feed him invertebrates like crickets and cockroaches and worms. But we also provide him salad. I wanted to show you guys what it looks like when he eats. So we've got some nice crickets in here. We'll pop this open and we'll give Elliot some crickets to eat so we can watch what he looks like when he eats. Okay, so he pays very close attention. He'll follow them with his head. He's got a nice triangular shaped head. Of course, our cricket goes out of view underneath the carpet here. We've got one more. he's looking at me like, what do you want me to do with that? He is really attracted to movement, so if they're staying still, we don't really get much from him. Or, of course, this just might be the morning that he is not hungry. Oh, there he goes. Okay. Maybe he's just being a little lazy and he wants the bugs to come to him. But we see that when he eats, he kind of orientates his head toward it. And then he'll stick out his tongue to grab it. We'll put in a few more there. The crickets are just dusted in a nice little calcium powder. That's why they're nice and white. It's just a little supplement boost for our captive red bearded dragon. It seems this morning he's not too motivated to eat. He might have had a big dinner last night. But we did see that one little cricket that he got. So sometimes he'll chase the crickets, but a lot of times he waits for them to come near him, and then he'll strike and stick out his tongue and bring it back into his mouth. I don't think we're going to get much more out of him eating-wise. I think if he was going to eat, if he was interested in eating them, he would have done it. We're going to get Elliot back into his enclosure with some of these crickets to maybe make him a little bit more comfortable if he wants to eat them or not. But for this morning's Facebook Live, this is Elliot the Bearded Dragon, one of our residents at the Barnes Nature Center. As always, the Nature Center trails are open sunrise to sunset. Make sure to hit the red trail. It's a natural trail, relatively flat, half a mile long, to look out for those St. Patrick Day shamrocks to spell out the hidden message. When you finish the trail and find the hidden message, you can take a picture at the end of the trail and tag the Environmental Learning Centers of Connecticut Facebook page. We'll send you something back in return. And then head on over to the Environmental Learning Centers of Connecticut website, elcct.org, to sign up for our Pancake Breakfast. That's this Saturday starting at 8. You must pre-register. It is pick up, grab, and go Pancake Breakfast this year. But while you're here, of course, you can stop in and see our maple sugaring demo. But to get Pancake Breakfast, you must pre-register. So head on over to our website to do that. You'll be tasting the maple syrup that we have been making the last few weeks here at the Indian Rock Nature Preserve. But thanks for tuning in this morning to learn a little bit about Elliot, our bearded dragon. We'll be back here on the ELCCT Facebook page on Thursday at 10 a.m. So thanks for tuning in this morning and have a great rest of your day.